offered to.
Before I pray, I want to give you a little two pieces of information. The first piece of information is that I like to operate that every word I say is a prayer. There's power in the word. The second piece of information is how to identify a self-confessed liar. And the Holy Spirit woke me up one day and he said, kidding is lying. So you know how people say, I'm kidding, I'm kidding? They're confessing for being a liar. So those two things before I offer before I pray. Father, we thank you for this time, and we thank you for Daniel's life. And Lord, I ask you to comfort Lucy with your spirit, that she draw near to you and will be comforted in her time of grief and loss. And I ask your blessing on today's meeting, that your revelation knowledge will germinate the seeds of liberty in our hearts, and that the information that Glenn has for us today will be effective. We give you all the praise and glory in our Messiah's name, we pray.
Amen. Let it be done.
Good morning. Today is February 25th. I'll be reading Proverbs 25. These also are Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. As the heavens for height and the earth for depth, so the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from silver, and it will go into the silver's place for jewelry. Take away the wicked from before the king, and the throne will be established in righteousness. Do not exalt yourself in the presence of the king, and do not stand in the place of the great. For it is better that he say to you, come up here, than you should be put lower in the presence of the prince, whom your eyes have seen. Do not go hastily into court, for what will you do in the end, when your neighbor has put you to shame? Debate your case with your neighbor. Do not expose the secret to another. Lest he who hears it expose your shame, and your reputation be ruined. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in the settings of silver, like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold. It is a wise rebuker to an obedient ear. Like a mold of snow in time of harvest, it is a faithful messenger to those who send him, for he refreshes the soul of the master. Whoever falsely boasts of giving is like cloud, wind without rain. By a long progress, a ruler is persuaded, and a gentle tongue breaks a bone. Have you found honey? Eat only as much as you need, lest you be filled with it and vomit. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, lest he become weary of you and hate you. A man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a club, a sword, and a sharp arrow. Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth and a foot out of joint. Like one who takes away a garment in cold weather, and like vinegar and soda, is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap coals of fire on his head, and the Lord will reward you. The north wind brings rain, angrily countenance. It is better to dwell in the corner of a house top than in a house shared with a contemptuous woman. As the cold water is to a weary soul, so is good news from far country. A righteous man is awful before the wicked, like a monkey's fur, and a polluted well. It is not good to eat much honey, so to seek one's own glory is not glory. Whoever has no rule over his own soul, like a city broken down without wall. That concludes Proverbs 25. Thank you.
Good. All right, thank you, Steve. On YouTube, they're saying the sound quality is poor. Okay, so what I want to do is I'll first start off with, this is an email I sent out to people here recently. Anything that Congress does that's unconstitutional, or that the government does, unless you can find a way to challenge it, the courts have to presume it's valid. Okay? When a state forms a constitution which is approved by Congress, it is stopped to deny its validity. So, in other words, they got up there and they said the 14th Amendment had been ratified. The courts cannot dispute. That's political, is what it is. It's political. There's actually, the action of Congress cannot be inquired into, for the judicial is bound to follow the action of the political department. So the thing you have to understand, matter of fact, there's a guy here in Texas, I uploaded a sound file, I turned it into a video that I uploaded to YouTube, where he will actually go into court and he'll say, well, you know, you guys are asking for Federal Reserve notes and the value of money is political. And because under the Constitution, it's only supposed to be gold or silver coin. But they've gone and made this fake money. And so therefore, I think you ought to dismiss this case. And it'll get dismissed. And he goes into a little bit more argument. He's got like 3 different arguments that he uses, depending on how much he has to push it. But ultimately, it gets dismissed because they're wanting Federal Reserve notes. It's political, okay? And so the reason I'm bringing that up is because this act of Congress right here was passed on August 5th of 1861. And the reason this is a political is because Congress was operating under executive authority. What happened, if we look at history again, in 1861, the southern states walked out of Congress, and Congress ceased to have a quorum, and they couldn't conduct business. So Lincoln ordered them back under executive authority on the 15th of April. Notice the date, the 15th of April of 1861, Lincoln ordered Congress to reconvene. And so they're reconvening under executive authority, but that's political. And so you have to understand that everything that's gone on since then has been political, but you have to bring up that it's political. Anyways, so this is the act in 1861 that creates property taxes. And this is August 5th, 1861, an act to provide increased revenue from imports and pay interest on the public debt for other purposes. It starts off talking about duties on certain imports, okay? On sugar, soda ash, bicarbonate of soda. It's listing all sorts of stuff. Ad valorem taxes, duties on certain imports. And so the first 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 sections actually. But then section 8, it says that be it further enacted that a direct tax of $20 million is hereby annually laid upon the United States, and the same shall be and is hereby apportioned to the states respectively. So it's by apportionment. So each state has to pay the tax, and then they're supposed to collect it from property owners, and we'll go into it further. So the state of Texas in 1861 was required to pay $350,106 2/3. And so then in section 9 says, for the purpose of assessing the above tax, anyways, what I'm going to do is I'll go back to this PowerPoint presentation because I go into it, but that's the act, okay, and that's all there, and it's all taken from this act. What we're going to talk about today is all there, and it's all taken from this act. Oh, and this is the act in Texas that, of course, Texas had seceded from the Union, and so there was a civil war going on. And so the legislature of Texas, by the time Texas was readmitted to the Union, they had to pass this act. And this is the act in support of that by the legislature of the state of Texas. And notice it's taken from the Gamma Law Books. Volume 8, Gamma, they're called Gamma Law Books. Anyways, an act defining what money and property is subject to taxation or exempt, and the mode of listing the same. And the legislature of the state of Texas, that all real or personal property in the state and the property of corporations now existing or may hereafter be created, and the property of all banks or banking companies now existing or may hereafter be created. So that's all that was imposed, that the tax was imposed upon. Real property for the real property, section 3 talks about in this state, and we're going to talk about that further. And here it goes in section 4, says the term person, whenever used in this act or any other act regulating the assessment or collection of taxes, shall be construed to include firm, company, or corporation. So that's all it is. That's nothing else, because the word include is limiting. So this is the actual act. We're going to talk about it more in this PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to go through right now. So this is the PowerPoint presentation. So, talking about property taxes in Texas. So this is the form, rendition, general real property rendition of taxable property, form 50-141. So, first of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm a lawyer. No, I'm a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, and I don't know everything, and I'm open to any ideas. The reason I found out about this is a lady actually invited me out to lunch one time, and she told me how she was in a house in Flower Mound, and she had been through a foreclosure 10 years ago and was still in the house. And she had been out of work and couldn't afford the property taxes. Flower Mound, if you all know Flower Mound, it's an expensive area. It was probably a $400,000 or $500,000 house or more. And so she couldn't afford to pay the $10,000 a year in property taxes. So she went down to the Tarrant County Tax Assessor Collector and started reading the Riot Act to them. Who rented this property for taxation? I'm going to sue their butt off. And immediately they came back and said, don't worry, we'll take it off the tax rolls. So that's how I found out about it. Anyways, so there's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. I got to silence my phone here.
Can you enlarge this just a hair to make it easier to read?
Yeah,
The whole, there you go.
like that?
Yeah, there you go. Better. Thank you.
Can you see it better that way? So if the people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? And that's what I see. So many people that have no idea about their rights or where their rights come from or anything like that. Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, tax evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot the cops. And think about it. That's what they were doing. You know, the malicious. That's what they did. Maybe we need to start doing that again. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. And if you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. And looks like about 9 people watching right now. Okay, so government's not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. We're all products of the government's educational system. The government's taught us what we need to know to operate in their system, but have they taught us everything? And I would say absolutely not. Matter of fact, they do things to dumb us down. This is an act in 1820 at 3 Stat 566, where it is an act making further provision for the sale of public lands, which was approved April 24th, 1820. And be it further enacted that credit shall not be allowed for the purchase money on the sale of any of the public lands which shall be sold. So if you think about it, if you use Federal Reserve notes to pay for your land, you really didn't pay for it. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group called Sovereignty International is being deleted. It takes time to ban 17,000 people off your private group. And there's about 5 steps. Actually, somebody that's a computer nerd has offered to have a bot do it for me. So that's certainly an interesting proposition. My freelist.org private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants, and my Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Follow me on BitChute at Sovereignty International. HowTube, Sovereignty International. Truth Social at Engineer Win. I took down my Twitter page. Anyways, this is Senator King. This is in the Congressional Record. Senator King of New York in March 1820 during the passage of the Act for the Sale of Public Lands. It was calculated to plant in the new country a population of independent, unembarrassed freeholders, that it would place every man the power to purchase a freehold, the price of which he could be cleared in 3 years, that it would cut out speculation and monopoly, that it would prevent the accumulation of alarming debt, which experience proved never would and never could be paid. Gee, that sounds like today. We are then to regard the Revolution and these acts of assembly as emancipating every acre of the soil of Pennsylvania from the grand characteristic of the feudal system. So what we have now is a feudal system. Think about it. Even as to the lands held by the proprietaries themselves, they held them as other citizens held under the Commonwealth, and that by a title purely allodial. All our lands are held immediately or immediately of the state by the titles purged of all the rubbish of the Dark Ages, excepting only the feudal names of things not any longer feudal. Under the acts of assembly I have alluded to, the state became the proprietor of all lands, but instead of giving them like a feudal lord to an enslaved tenantry, she sold them for the best price she could get and conferred on the purchaser the same absolute estate she held herself. And these have been reserved, as everything else has been granted by contract. After the American Revolution, lands in the state, Maryland in this case, became allodial, subject to no tenure nor to any services incident thereto. From what source does the title to the land derive from a government spring? In arbitrary governments from the supreme head, be he the emperor, king, or potentate, or by whatever name he is known, in a republic from the law making or authorizing to be made the grant or sale. In the first case, the party looks alone to his letters patent. In the second, to the law and the evidence of the acts necessary to be done under the law. To a perfection of his grant, donation, or purchase, the law alone must be the fountain from whence the authority is drawn, and there can be no other source. The land patent is minument of title. Such title being absolute in its nature, making the sovereigns absolute freeholders on their lands. Finally, the patent is the only evidence of legal fee simple title. So we go back to history. The southern states walked out of Congress in 1861. Congress failed to have a quorum, could not conduct business. Under executive authority, on the 15th of April, 1861, Lincoln ordered Congress to reconvene. That's found at 12 Stat 1258. On the 5th of August, 1861, Congress passed an act to provide for increased revenue from imports and to pay interest on the public debt and for other purposes, which we just looked at. So Section 8, which we looked at, be it further enacted that a direct tax of $20 million be and is hereby annually laid upon the United States, the same shall be and is hereby apportioned to the states, respectively, manner following. To the state of Texas, $355,106 2/3 dollars. Apportionment is based on the population, and the tax is laid on the state itself, and the state has to collect it. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers. That's Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. So taxes, assessors, and collectors at Section 9 at 12 Stat 296. They're required to execute a bond at Section 10 at 12 Stat 296. They have an oath of office at Section 11 at 12 Stat 297. The Secretary of the Treasury to provide regulations at Section 12 at 12 Stat 297. A direct tax on lands and lots of ground at Section 13 at 12 Stat 297. And a Board of Assessors at Section 25 at 12 Stat 300. All of that stuff is in place right now. Tax liens at Section 33 at 12 Stat 303. And every collector shall exercise or be guilty of any extortion or oppression under color of this act shall be liable at Section 43 at 12 Stat 307. And a penalty for taking a false oath, perjury of oath at Section 47 at 12 Stat 308. And there shall be allowed in full compensation for their services a commission. So they get a commission for their theft. That's Section 48 at 12 Stat 308. And then what they did is in 1862, they passed the Homestead Act, which is only for persons, for fictions. So if you're a U.S. citizen, basically. 37th Congress, Section 2, 12 Stat 392. Be it further enacted that the person applying for the benefit of this act shall, upon application to the register of the land office. So I've seen some of these homesteads, and they're similar, but they're not the same as a land patent, but they look similar. Copies of these documents can be found on my website. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 150 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. I can email you those two documents, the PDFs that we showed earlier, which is 12 Stat 292, the actual Act of Congress, and then the Act of Texas. So if you send me an email, I'll send it to you. For a complete set of YouTube videos with over private information shares, a DVD with over 150 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin. Somebody gave me some silver coin today, and that was really very nice. Thank you very much. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the checks, the money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. So the Homestead Act, in 1862, it says, Section 4, be it further enacted that no lands acquired after such provisions of this act shall be in any event become liable to the satisfaction of any debt or debts contracted prior to the issuing of the patent, therefore. A person is only a fictitious entity. This is 1871. The Act of 1871, an act, well, it's actually not the Act of 1871 that created the corporation. This is an act prescribing the form of enacting and resolving clauses of acts and resolutions of Congress and rules of construction. Be it further enacted in all acts hereinafter passed it, the word person may extend and be applied to bodies politic and corporate. So that's how you can sue a corporation. An act concerning the construction of statutes, which was approved January 2nd, 1852 by the Legislative Assembly of the Territory of New Mexico. So being enacted, Section 1, that the construction of the statutes of this territory, the following rules shall be observed. The word person may be extended to bodies politic and corporate. And Arizona statutes, see, if you look at history again, Arizona was split off from New Mexico. It was originally part of the New Mexico territory, and then they split it, and it became the Arizona territory and New Mexico territory, which was all part of, parts of New Mexico is what was once Texas, because it goes to the Rio Grande. Okay, so up to the Rio Grande is Treaty of Hidalgo. And this side of the Rio Grande, everything this side is Texas. Anyways, an act to provide temporary government for the territory of Arizona, and together with all legislative enactments of the territory of New Mexico not inconsistent with the provisions of this act are hereby extended to and continue in force in said territory. So they just used all the New Mexico acts until they made another act that defined it. Anyways, when used in this title or were not otherwise expressly or manifestly incompatible with the intent thereof, the person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. So it is, and it's the minor estate. That's what they're assaulting you with. Okay, you have to understand that. Bankster, check out my other videos. There's a Bankster Thieves playlist. There's a Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments playlist. There's a bar members 1 through 12. Actually, I think it's more than 12. Do it yourself, how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft. Martial laws here. Do it yourself, no income tax. Do it yourself, free bail. Do it yourself, kangaroo courts. Canada Border Pigs playlist. Bar members and their Satanic Connections playlist. So this is the Texas Act that we looked at a minute ago. An act defining what money and property is subject to taxation or exemption, and the mode of listing the same on August 21st, 1876. Section 1, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, that all real and personal property in the state, the property of corporations, new, existing, or may hereafter be created. That should be now existing. Or may hereafter be created, and the property of all banks or banking companies now existing or may hereafter created, and of all bankers. And so then that's in section 1. And then if you go into section 4, it says the term person, whenever used in this any act or any other act regulating the assessment and collection of taxes, shall be construed to include firm, company, or corporation. So include is limited. Okay, this is Montello Salt versus Utah, U.S. Supreme Court. Include, or the participial form thereof, is defined to comprise within, to hold, to contain, enclose, comprise, comprehend, embrace, involve. That means it's all there is. This is American Dictionary of the English Language, Noah Webster, 1828. Include, to confine within, to hold, to contain, as a shell of a nut includes the kernel. A pearl is included in a shell. To comprise, to comprehend, to contain. And then Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. Include, to shut in, to keep within. To confine within, to hold as an enclosure. Take in, attain, shut up, contain, enclose, comprise, comprehend, embrace, involve. And that's quoting Premier Products versus Cameron court case. So in this state, remember I pointed out in this state in the Texas Tax Code? Well, in the Texas Tax Code, section 151.004, in this state, means within the exterior limits of Texas, that includes all territory within these limits ceded to or owned by the United States. An assistant prosecuting attorney is licensed to practice law only in federal areas of Texas. This is an assistant prosecuting attorney must be licensed to practice law in this state. Under Texas Government Code 41.103, assistant prosecuting attorney. All judges practice law in the federal areas of Texas. And to qualify for appointment as an associate judge under this subchapter, a person must, 1, be a resident of the state and of the counties the person will serve. 2, have been licensed to practice law in this state. Texas Government Code, section 54A.003. All bar members are allowed to practice law only in federal areas of Texas. The Board of Law Examiners, acting under instructions of the Supreme Court as provided by this chapter, shall determine the eligibility of candidates for examinations for a license to practice law in this state. And that's Texas Government Code section 82.004. All juries are only for federal areas of Texas. The Office of Court Administration of the Texas Judicial System shall develop and maintain a model for a uniform written jury summons in this state. Texas Government Code section 62.0131, form of written jury summons. An act defining what money and property is subject to taxation or exemption and the mode of listing the same. August 21st, 1876. Oh man, I should move that. Doesn't belong there. Actually, that goes up there. So it goes to section 6. Whoops. Right. So we went through that. Then we do this. There we go. So this is section 6. Texas legislature, an act defining what money and property is subject to taxation or exemption and the mode of listing the same. And section 6, all property shall be listed for taxation between January 1st and June 1st of each year, when required by the assessors with reference to the quantity held or owned on the first day of January in the year for which the property is required to be listed or rendered. So that's where that rendition, that general rendition form comes into play. So originally, Congress intended that land could not be encumbered in any way. Property taxes were originated by the Act of Congress in 1861 for U.S. citizens. This is an intermediate summary that we're going in through here right now. The Homestead Act is a privilege for U.S. citizens. State statutes are actually U.S. statutes. If you used, or the bail priests and the so-called courts can presume that you used Federal Reserve notes to pay for land, then it's not paid for. They're assaulting you with their minor estate, 31 CFR 363.6. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia through their plenary power nationally, covers those citizens even when one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. So they're bringing the District of Columbia outside 10 miles square in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So let's see what we got for questions here. I guess not. So this is the minor estate that they're assaulting you with. Entity means any owner of a Treasury direct account that's not an individual. Entity is a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, or professional limited liability company, trust, the estate of a decedent, or the estate of a living person, such as an incompetent or a minor. Minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. The term minor is also used to refer to an individual who's attained the age of 18 years, but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. So it can be anybody under that definition. So then remember, in this Tidewater Transfer Company says, through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states. So plenary jurisdiction accords full and absolute power of the subject matter. It's a dictatorship. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Full, complete, entire. Black's Law Dictionary, 9th edition. Plenary power. Complete power over a particular area with no limitations. The term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress. Under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress. And that's Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School, which means you have no common law rights. There are no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. And it's in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 says to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles squared, as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So this minor estate was created by the Roman cult. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mortmain. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, the pages aren't numbered, so that's the only way you can find it. And even the definition of mortmain is like about 4 pages. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for they were driven out of all their former holes. They devised a new method of conveyance by which lands were granted not to themselves directly, but the nominal fees to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profit, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account to assesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And this is the Roman cult. They still run the courts. They do it today. I've had judges admit that it's a satanic religious ceremony. Anyways, don't get me going. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. It's still the foundation of modern conveyancing. And so this was brought into the U.S. in the Code of Law for the District of Columbia at 31 Stat 1432, where it says the legal estate to be a necessity use. Use is short for usufruct. So Federal Reserve banknotes and other notes constituting a part of the common currency of the country are recognized as good tender for money unless specifically objected to. Banknotes are contracts. A banknote resembles a common promissory note issued by a bank or corporation authorized to act as a bank. It is in fact a promissory note, but such notes are not for many purposes to be considered as mere securities for money, but are treated as money in the ordinary course and transaction of business by the general consent of mankind. You agree to it. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They form a part of the public debt of the United States. And that's Supreme Court, Juilliard versus Greenman. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Truth Social, Engineer Win. Don't forget to follow me on Steam at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steam, don't forget to vote and make your comments. That's my YouTube channel there, the front page. The subscribe button, which is next to the arrow right here, is normally red, so it's already been clicked, but the bell needs to be clicked if you want to get notifications. At common law, only gold and silver were legal tender. So it's all tied to the fake money. If you want common law, then you must have honest measures. If you want lawful land, then you must defeat the bill presumptions. If you want to be a state citizen instead of a U.S. citizen, you have to quit doing things that U.S. citizens do and start doing things that state citizens do. If you want to have all the rights and privileges of the land patent, then you need to bring them forward. I have exclusive content available on howtube.com. HowTube controls the billing. It's $9.99 a month for videos plus unlimited email consultations, but I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in a lawyer. No, I'm in a liar. But I can tell you what I would do and where to find forums. The only power these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. Some of my exclusive content is Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third-Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration, Criminal Complaint Training, Lawsuit Training. I have one video on lawsuit training, and I need to do some more, but I just haven't done them yet. Other training requests, if it's something I can do, and if it's not something I've already done, I'll consider it. The Northeast Private Information Share videos are up there. Some of them are exclusive and some of them are public. All forest filers and other instructions are available for free on my two private groups at Freelist and Google Groups. All exclusive content will be on my HowTube, and you can buy a subscription there. So, also on my website, there's a link on the front page of my website. Let me see if I can find that here. Okay, so this is my website. Let's make sure it's coming through. Yeah, there we go. So this is my website. And if you go here, the read files, these are files that would be, what I do is I turn all of my PowerPoint presentations into a PDF file. So the PDF files from the PowerPoint presentations are there. There's also some there's a generic 23-point challenge to jurisdiction document. There's a bunch of forms that you can use if you have a court case going on or something like that. And there's some books. There's 2 gigabytes worth of stuff here. So there's the Libra code. There's a bunch of documents here, and you can download them all. So there's a lot of stuff. Generic. Let's see if we can find the generic stuff. There's a bunch of generic here, right here. Generic affidavit of no social security number, bank claim for relief, bill of particulars, certificate of non-response. So there's Word files and PDF files. So then also, this is the front page again. If you go to this, watch the video, the free educational videos, those are links to YouTube videos, okay? And so it's hard to find my YouTube videos on YouTube. And so what I did is I organized them here by topics. And so common law, the ultimate solution, bar members, international law, banksters, taxes, do-it-yourself series. So they're all organized by topics. So you can go there and you can find the videos and watch them from that page on my website. So that's my website again, sovereigntyinternational.fyi. So anyways, back to the PowerPoint presentation. There we go. Okay. So this is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, 48 Stat 337. As used in this act, the term United States means the government of the United States. And the term currency of the United States, which means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes Federal Reserve notes, United States notes, and Federal Reserve notes, which means they're legal tender in the government of the United States. All acts and parts of this act, that's section 17. They like to put that stuff in there. Anyways, so currency which is legal tender in the government of the United States. 12 U.S.C. 411. Federal Reserve notes to be issued at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System for the purpose of making advances to the Federal Reserve banks through the Federal Reserve agents as hereinafter set forth and for no other purpose are authorized. The said notes shall be obligations of the United States, shall be receivable by all national member banks of the Federal Reserve banks for all taxes, customs, and other public duties. There's a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. So, they lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up. So what you're doing is you're discharging it with limited liability when you use your Federal Reserve notes. Promissory note. A written promise to pay a certain sum of money at a future time unconditionally. A promise promissory note differs from mere acknowledgement of debt without any promise to pay, as when a debtor gives a creditor an IOU. So right now, those Federal Reserve notes you have in your wallet are really IOUs, because they're not saying when they're going to pay it. And it's got the word dollar on it. It's really nothing. It's not a dollar. Well, that's the end of this presentation. So anyways, it's all tied to the fake money. This case, they've dismissed my federal case. So, but I think I got everything I wanted to get into a record for the appeal. And so I'm debating about whether they dismissed it without prejudice, which means I can go back and ask them to review it again. But so I can do that, or I can go to the Court of Appeals, and so we'll see. I haven't decided what exactly I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it pretty soon, because I've had to stick around here because of this lawsuit, and because I have to go down and check the court for filings and stuff like that, which has been a bit of a nuisance. I've been wanting to go to Arizona and go and hang out at Phoenix for a week or so, and it's nice and warm there. It's been in the 80s in Arizona. So anyways, so we'll see. I haven't decided what exactly I'm going to do. I'm still kind of humming on. They dismissed it, I think it was the 21st. So I got a month to file a notice of appeal if I'm going to file a notice of appeal. And that's real simple. If I ask them to review it, I got to come up with some arguments to review it. And it's better just to, the notice of appeal is a one-pager. Notice is hereby provided. I'm going to appeal the order of this fake court. It is a fake court. Anyways, so we'll see. I haven't decided yet, but I'll probably just appeal it. And it might be an opportunity to take it to the Supreme Court, because I'm asking for major stuff against the State Bar of Texas, and I think that needs to be brought up. The State Bar of Texas, it's an emerging dictatorship. Yeah, did you have something you wanted to say, Steve?
Yeah, you said you're on howto.com. Where do I find you on howto.com?
He wanted to know where he finds me on howto.com. If you go to, let me just go there. Howto.com. Oh, got it spelled wrong. Okay, this is how to, and if you do a search for Sovereignty International, let me put this on the YouTube.
When I put in howto.com, it comes up with a website called house.org. HOWTO?
How to, HOWTUBE.
Oh, tube. Okay.
Okay, you see it up there? HowTube. So you do a search for Sovereignty International. There we go. There's me. Okay, there's my page on HowTube and the videos that I've uploaded. There's 111 videos. So you can actually get a subscription on my website, and I can handle payment for that. Like somebody bought a subscription for me on my website here last weekend, and they sent me Digibyte, okay, cryptocurrencies. I can handle it if it's on my website. I can take payment a lot of different ways. not a problem. But I'm not advertising that. I want to try and move everybody over to how to. But I've still got actually quite a few subscribers on my website too. If you go to my website, see here, you can subscribe right now, and it gives you a login and you got to validate the email address. There's a little procedure. My webmaster is taking care of all that for me, so he's pretty good. Anyways, so you can, but HowTube is the one that I advertise, and there's a lot more videos on HowTube. The one on my website, those are all YouTube videos that are private, so they're not accessible to anybody except if you go through my website. Then you can get access to them. But all those videos and many more are on HowTube. There's 111 videos on HowTube, and the good ones that YouTube. Matter of fact, YouTube has taken down a bunch of my videos, not a bunch, but a few, and I put those up on HowTube. So if you want to see videos that have been taken down by YouTube, go to HowTube, so there's videos. There's a lot of stuff on HowTube that's just not available on YouTube at all. And then there's a lot more. There's like I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 videos that are exclusive videos that are on. They're YouTube videos. They're exclusive. But on HowTube, there's 111 right now, and I'm adding them up. I add more all the time. So there's a lot more on HowTube that you can watch. And all the ones that YouTube takes down, they automatically go to HowTube. Anyways, anybody else have any questions?
So this was, I came up here because it was supposed to be on property taxes in Texas.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of statutes, but I'm not seeing how do I get out of paying property taxes in Texas.
Well, the one lady went down there and confronted the tax assessor collector and started threatening to sue their butt off. Who rented my land for taxation, right? That's the form. You can do a search online for rendition, Texas Form 50-141. For that form right here. Matter of fact, I got the form. I can send it to you if you want, but you can do a simple search and come up with the form. And what you'll have to do is, the best thing to do probably is confront them before it ever gets to a lawsuit or tax liens or anything like that. If they're sending you a bill, go down and confront them and read the Riot Act to them. What happens, and this is something I brought up in my lawsuit. Let's find it here. What they do is they render it for you without authority, and so they know that they got a problem.
So you don't need an allodial title or a land pass in order to get out of paying property taxes. You just need to say who rendered my property.
Yeah, well, that's what she did. Yeah. Well, the thing is that you have to understand, first of all, that if there's a mortgage on the property, then you don't own it. The bank owns it.
Okay.
Right? Until that mortgage is paid off. See, she had been through a foreclosure 10 years before. The more you build a case, for your position, the better. When I brought forward a land patent on that property, but there was defects. And, these lawyers seem to think they could go ahead and do what they're doing. I'm not done with these lawyers. And so, but there was defects. There's no doubt about it. I should have put it on legal size paper. Could have done. I had a meets and bounds legal description. I could have used it, and I couldn't find it when it came time to record the deed. It's a long story, but anyways, so there was defects in it for sure, and that might have prevented them. They sued me and they got a judgment, and so I filed a lawsuit as a collateral attack in federal court. That's what I did. And so now it's going to go to the Court of Appeals, and they say that if you have to hire a lawyer to go to the Supreme Court, then you gotta pay $2 million. And so, I have no idea. I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times, and I certainly didn't pay $2 million. I didn't even pay the filing fee, just time and effort, you know what I mean? And so, so they're gonna pay, it's gonna cost them way more than they can possibly imagine. Because I'll take them to the Supreme Court, that's not a problem. And probably, I can tell you what's happened in other states, like I did this in Arizona, and I never heard another peep out of anybody about property taxes after that. Never, not a peep. And so, so I've got several parcels of land in Arizona. They're not, a lot of the counties in Arizona are more, they're not as corrupt as they are here. Okay, let me put it that way. And so they have, what they have is an affidavit of property value, right? So I serve them by registered mail, my deed, and I'll say, this is the deed, and then they'll send it back. I'll give them the filing fee and everything. And then they'll send it back with my filing fee and with an unsigned letter, because nobody wants to accept responsibility for it. You see what I'm saying? They'll send you back an unsigned letter, and they'll say, the unsigned letter will say that you forgot to fill out your affidavit of property value. So we've attached one here for you to fill out. In the meanwhile, we've put it in a special file. Perfect. That's the non-taxpaying file. So I've never sent them their affidavit of property value. And that's the end of the discussion.
So my particular situation, I am still paying a mortgage, and I've got an IRS tax lien on the property.
Right.
So am I screwed there as far as property taxes are concerned still? Or
Well,
I'm putting together a suit against the IRS and 4 of its agents that have really destroyed me, basically. But until that's done, there's still this lien on the property.
right. I took the IRS to the Supreme Court twice, and they don't want to talk to me now. They don't ask, I don't tell. Okay? So the IRS, even these taxing is it's all based on that minor estate. Okay, that's the minor estate again. They're addressing that minor estate. And so what happened is I was actually working at US Airways. Okay, it's for an airline. Okay, anybody that works for an airline is definitely federal personnel. Okay, you cannot work for an airline and not be federal personnel. And so,
What about the 135 charter company?
doesn't matter. It's
aviation.
It's aviation. Okay.
So
Anyways,
as a pilot, I'm considered federal personnel.
yeah,
As a pilot?
yeah. Well, first of all, did you have to give them a social security number? I guarantee you.
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah. And if you look up Title 5, United States Code, Section 552, AA 13, anyone with a social security number is federal personnel.
And that's,
You can correct that.
So you might be able to, but the point is that I had been filing exempt. I filed exempt for 3 years, and then they sent me a request to file. And now the thing you have to understand about the IRS is that they cannot go after you for willful failure to file as long as you have an honest belief that you're not required to file. Okay? There's court cases that talk about that. And so I sent them back a 10-page letter telling them why I'm not required to file. And so they can't go after you criminally at that point. See what I'm saying? So then all they can do is try and steal your property. So they sent US Airways a letter to change my withholdings to like 0 exemptions, and they were taking out maximum taxes. So, my attitude is I just left US Airways. I said, screw you. If you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to work. And I left. And so I went and got a job here in Dallas, working on the Joint Strike Fighter program, and where I was working, I worked through an LLC, and I can show you how to do that. That's one of the things I do with trusts and LLCs, where I'm just there, and they don't get anything from me. I'm just working there as a contractor. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyways, so the IRS, I sued them and took it to the Supreme Court twice, and now they don't ask and I don't tell. And so I don't put myself in a position that I'll be having withholdings taken out. Okay, no W-2 positions. I do not take a W-2 position. I only work as a contractor, and I work through a company called American Engineering Services, LLC, which I don't own. Okay, I'm just an employee, so you're going to have to talk to the trustee if you want to find out information about American Engineering Services. I don't own it. And so, but I do happen to have a debit card for that account. Anyways, so they don't want to talk to me, and if they don't ask, and I don't tell them. So the bottom line though is, so what happened is that was the issue. I sent them a 10-page letter. I said, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I don't have income. There's a Supreme Court case that says that income is corporate profits, right? And so it's about a 10-page letter telling them why I'm not required to file. And so then they started stealing my compensation. And so I said, well, screw you, and left. And so it might come down to that. You're going to have to.
I've had to quit 3 jobs already because they've gone after my
Right.
And I'm on my 4th job now, and if they come after it again, I'm screwed. So Title 5, you said Title 5, what was the?
USC, Section 552 AA 13.
552 A
13.
13.
Yep. Lucky 13.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways, so what I would do, and what I do, but I haven't been able to get a job since 2015 because of other issues, and so at any rate, the last job I had was in 2015. That's 10 years ago now, and it'll be 10 years in August actually. But so we'll see how it goes. There's a bunch of lawsuits I need to file. I learned a bunch of stuff on this lawsuit, like how to not pay the filing fee, and how to not follow some of the things they want you to do. Like, for example, they sent me a letter saying I had to do electronic filing. I've had cases dismissed because I failed to do electronic filing. So I sent them back a notice of objection to their electronic filing, and I said, sure, no problem, I'll do your electronic filing when you tell me your statutory and delegated authority that requires me to get a driver's license, get a social security number, get a bank account, and then I need a Fourth Amendment warrant that requires me to disclose all that information so that I can do your electronic filing. And was crickets. Never heard another word about it. Matter of fact, the judge was actually helping me because every time he got an order, he got a motion to dismiss or whatever. He says, I have before me a motion to dismiss by whoever, and you have until this date to respond to the motion to dismiss. So they were babysitting me in the thing, I think.
So I want to bring the case as a plaintiff, though. I don't want my case dismissed. So I would have to comply with the electronic filing then, right? I mean,
No, that's the point. I didn't do electronic filing.
But you said they dismissed the case.
Well, they eventually dismissed it, but they were helping me through it. They babysat me through the whole thing. I filed this case in August. If they're going to dismiss it for electronic filing, it would have been done in August or maybe September, but it would have been dismissed way back then.
Right. Well, like I said, I'm the plaintiff in this case. I want my money back, and I don't want them to dismiss the case. I want them to render. I'm going to do a jury trial. I want a verdict of where you're going to get awarded back all your property.
With the IRS, it's especially difficult, okay? Because under their rules, if there's an amount in controversy, you have to pay it first and then sue them and try to get some of it back. And so that's number one. Number two, you're presumed guilty. With the IRS, you're presumed guilty. It's the minor estate they're dealing with. But having said all that, Trump has said he wants to get rid of the IRS. And in fact, they've laid off a bunch of people with the IRS. They moved them
so far.
Yeah. So the point being is that that's why he started up the External Revenue Service, and he's I think he's going to, and so you never know. By fall, they might be gone, and so you just don't know how it's all going to play out. I guess we're going to see.
Can I add a thing?
Well, they already have an External Revenue Service. That's where the tariffs come in, the duties, the imposts, all that is already something that Congress has a right to do. I think getting rid of the IRS is also a mistake because there, again, it's the duties, excise, and imposts. The federal income tax has been said by Moore last year in the Moore versus United States that the federal income tax is an excise tax.
Yes, I know.
It's voluntary.
Well,
Income
it's not-
tax is
It's an
voluntary.
excise tax. If you have federal income, you owe the income tax. If you don't have federal income, guess what? You don't owe the income tax.
Okay, here's
Well,
here's
they're
the point.
reporting, that's the thing, is they're
That-
reporting.
Right.
Let me add in here. There's a guy on that's got a channel, and he is very, very good at this. He's got tats all over the place, but he's like ex-military and whatever. But he has dug into the tax thing. There's 3 people or 3 entities that are actually considered the ones that are responsible for paying income tax. That's it. Now, so if you are a U.S. citizen under the 14th Amendment, you're a debt slave. You've agreed to pay the tax. And if you filed your 1040, that's your contract saying, yes, I agree to pay this. That's what they're actually prosecuting people on, is that because you signed that under penalty of perjury. Okay, so there's 3 entities that are required to pay tax. Foreign entities making money in the United States. Foreign entities that have an agent here that is transferring the money that they made out of the United States. So the agent. And then federal employees. So as a U.S. citizen under the corporation, you are agreeing that you are a federal employee.
Those living in Washington, D.C.
And correct. So if you're born in Washington, D.C. or live there, you're considered a federal employee because that is not a state. So,
What Glenn said a while ago, if you have a social security number, you're considered.
well, there's a way to fix that. But so basically, if you say on a 1040 that you are a taxpayer, you're either volunteering that you are an agent for a foreign entity collecting their money and you are being responsible for their tax. So if you're not born and raised in or whatever in Washington, D.C., and you're not a federal employee, you're not an agent for a foreign entity, you are not the foreign entity, then you are actually committing a felony by saying you are one of those entities. So it's actually illegal to say you're a taxpayer when you're not. So there is a way out of that because the income tax is voluntary. You are volunteering to be a federal agent or a employee.
Actually, Kathy over there is a CPA, and she can help you with that.
Yeah, there you go.
And she deals with she does that kind of stuff. So yeah, she'd be a good person to talk to and get it so that correct your status. And she does that. She helps people with that. If you're in that system, and they don't want to talk to me, and so I don't volunteer anything, and I they don't. It's not anything that they don't want to talk to me, and I want to keep it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's, property taxes are different, but it's still under federal treasury regulations. It falls under Title 26, but it's not the IRS in that case. It's your local county, and it's all about that rendition. And so if you have a mortgage, that's a problem because technically you don't own it.
Right.
But and so I could tell you, you might be able to still talk to them and rattle a cage, and maybe they'll back off. I don't know. I don't know how much property taxes you're paying. Some places it's like really high. There's like this lady, she was paying $10,000 a year in property taxes, and it's different, but it's the same too because they still use the same 26 USC. It's very authoritarian, and you have to be very proactive about it.
So if the bank owns the property, it still shouldn't be taxed. If it's
Well-
not rented for.
When I bought my first piece of property, I bought my first piece of property back in the 90s. 90s or the 80s? It was the 80s. And there was actually a form in the closing documents where I agreed to pay the property taxes. Because technically, the bank is the one that's supposed to pay it. That's why a lot of them include it in the payment. See what I'm saying? We'll make it real convenient for you.
Yeah.
And because technically the bank is liable because they own the property until you pay it off.
Right.
And so once it's paid off, then how convenient they forget to take it off the tax rolls. But again, that's you can still you might just go in there and just rattle a cage and don't tell them there's a mortgage. Just tell them, look, who rented this property for taxation, and wait and see what they say. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And kind of take it from there.
I wanted to add something else here, something that I've been just learning on. When you have a mortgage on your property with one of the big banks, and they sell it within usually a few weeks after being funded, they're selling it to a broker that then splits it up and what's the word for changing money into the stocks? Securitizing. So when they securitize it, they basically split it up into 100,000 pieces, whatever, and then they sell it to different investors. So when they do that, your mortgage is paid off because they've sold it, number one. They've gotten paid off for it. But they're double dipping by charging this mortgage every month.
Actually, he's right. There's a guy that's on the We Are Law Telegram channel that's a forensic accountant. And
Ron Adams, he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, and he can prove it. He
Yeah.
can go into and so you could actually file a lawsuit against them once you can prove what's going on.
Ron Adams, I'll get with you, but I can give you some more info. But what I just wanted to kind of fuzz up on this. When they do this, there's no longer a promissory note. It's gone. So there is no injured party. So if you challenge them, you say, you send them a debt validation letter. You ask them for their the CUSIP number that was created when they made it a public asset, and your REMIC number. With the REMIC number, that is the packaging of, say, 50 mortgages, where they sell all those to a broker. Then they spread them out. The bank is no longer the injured party. They may be the servicer and have a right to collect on you, but they're only collecting for the investors that are buying the stocks. So if you challenge their validity, who is the injured party? The bank cannot appear because they have no standing. They are not the injured party. They would have to get every one of the stock owners to come into court and testify. They can't do that, and no attorney can testify for the alleged plaintiff because that's hearsay. So there is no standing. They can't do it, and so you challenge them on this with the challenge of the debt validation, and they won't show up at court. If you want to sue them,
how do you get the title if it's already been paid? The mortgage already been paid.
well, basically they're either going to take you to court if you stop paying, but if you keep paying while you're going through this process, they have no reason to take you to court. So then you become the plaintiff. You do the demand letters for the records. You want the CUSIP number and the REMIC number specifically. There's also another one, but that's lesser. So if they won't give you those documents, then you sue them for those documents. Then you prove by having them appear for a deposition for their most knowledgeable person, go for the CFO of the corporation. You think they're going to show up? No. So you get a default judgment against them for failure to appear, and then the note is gone. And so you have a judgment against them. You can even go after them for what they've made in profit on that bond that they monetized in your name and likeness.
Right. And also what you can do is this lady, I was telling you, this lady in Florimont, a little bit more that I haven't told you about, is that she had mortgage companies, or no, not mortgage companies, people buying those notes and trying to foreclose on her, even after 10 years after she hadn't made any payments or anything. And she went on a 2-week vacation and came back, and all of her furniture was moved out of her house, and with no trespassing signs all over the place. What she should have done is, after 7 years, you can claim squatters' rights.
Right.
She should have done a quiet title action on that property after 7 years and said, I want the title cleared up on this property, and then they would have been screwed.
You can also do the adverse possession.
Well, exactly. That's part of the
Yeah.
quiet title act.
Right.
And so again, you got to know what to do and how to do it and when, you know. But so I would suggest you get together with Kathy and then get together him and that Ron, what's his name?
Ron Adams.
Ron Adams, because he's pretty sharp. I've watched him on Telegram there. I watched him on some other places, and he's pretty sharp.
He's a forensic CPA.
Right.
He used to work for all these big banks in those departments, so he knows all the inside maneuvers.
So-
But even he hasn't. I didn't learn this from him. He's become a very close friend. But there's a guy in Florida who's doing this. He's doing your status corrections, and it's KL is what he goes by. And I've gone through his process, and he basically gives you all this stuff. You give him a copy of your birth certificate, he fills it all in, and then he sends it to you, and it's got the seals and everything on it. You file it with the Montana, Bighorn, Montana County, and you put it in your records. It has your fee schedule in, which is $5 million per violation of your copyright, of your name, your all caps name. You're going to you're going to separate from your all caps name. You're going to copyright that. You're going to create a DBA of that all caps name. You then become the man loaning your all caps name entity, that DBA, $100 million. And so you've given a credit to your all caps name. The courts cannot go against you, the man. They can only go against your all caps name. That's why they created it. Okay, so if they try to file a claim against that, you also get a bond in this process that is unlimited liability. So that bond, if you cause an accident, they sue you, say, okay, here you go collect from them.
I heard you.
So,
The audience needs to hear what he's saying.
so
At any rate, you need to talk to him privately, and we can do all that later. But anyway, so there's other remedies that are available than what you're talking about. But you have to understand you cannot mix your law. That's the important thing, is you can't mix it. So when you're doing that stuff, you stay strictly in that stuff, and you have to be careful about mixing your law. But anyways, I suppose that's it for me for today. I guess we'll end the live stream. If anybody's got any other further questions about what we talked about, with the property taxes, this is how it works. They're using that minor estate, and that's how that lady did it. Okay, she just who rented this property for taxation. And they immediately says, "Don't worry, we'll take it off the tax rolls." But more than that, you still have to do other stuff. She had this foreclosure that was hanging out there, and so she needed to deal with that, quiet the title, and get rid of that lien against the property. And after 7 years, you're entitled to squatters' rights. And she probably could have nipped that in the bud. Now she doesn't even have the house anymore, so which is kind of sad. But I don't think she had any kids with her, so I guess that's fortunate. Anyways.
Early on in your presentation, somehow, I forget exactly, I should have written it down, but somehow the United States and the United States is claiming sovereignty over the states.
Yeah.
So how does that work with the original state sovereignty?
Well, in the Constitution, I have the quote out of the Constitution that talked about that. Let me find it here.
write down your email address, and I'll send you a couple links.
I can text you.
I don't do texting.
Right here.
Blocked, I'll never do it.
Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. It actually says there's a lot more than just this. I should put some dots here, and there's dots after it. But it says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers. So then it goes through and talks about population, and in those days, it talked about 3/5 of other persons, and you couldn't include Indians, that kind of stuff. So, but that's in Article 1, Constitution.
Okay. Could you go back a few slides, and when you get to the one, I think I'll recognize the.
Glenn, I gotta head out.
Okay.
It's for me to bring lunch home.
Okay. Which one?
Keep going.
Randy Alger.
Randy?
Yep.
Nice to meet you. Please spell your last name.
Well, that's it. That's as far back as I need to go. I mean, the rest of it's generic stuff. What one are you looking at?
Keep going forward.
Oh.
No, I've been
I
called
had to
that.
do it. It had the word United States in there.
817-349-7335. And if you're
Keep going. That wasn't
817,
there.
Says annually upon the United States, right here, Section 8 of that
I don't
act.
recognize the number, but I'll put it in mine, but I don't recognize the number. I think it's spam. And I just,
No,
yeah, I'll put it in here. So.
yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, go back.
Anyway, yeah,
Go
I'll
back
send
to
you an
that
email
one.
with the full
Yeah,
links.
right there. Let me see.
Like I say, I just went through this process.
That's the Homestead Act.
And it provides a whole freaking package with it. And there's
All right, I guess you could close the
first two
the
are the
live stream.
He sends you the whole package, and he takes donations of $500.
Okay, so we'll see if there's any
So
questions.
you give $500, and he sends you the first package. With that, what you do, first of all, if you haven't done this yet, you need to order.
So if you want to contact me, you can contact me at engineerwin@yahoo.com. That's, I'll put it in the chat.
Certified birth certificates. Then you're gonna go to this, you're gonna send them back to the state. If you were born in another state, you send them back there to the SOS to get them. And then when they ask you, okay, so for your birth certificates, okay, so the apostille, make sure it's like Taiwan.
So you can contact me there.
Countries is for example, because they're not validated. Okay, there's a few others that are. So once you get that back, then you send it to the state.
We're going to have another one tomorrow night. Wednesday night, we have another live stream. I don't have it. I had this one scheduled for Wednesday night. I had to modify it for today. But so we'll be doing another one for everybody's information Wednesday night. So I'm going to end the stream now.
Thank everybody for showing up.
Thanks, everybody.